Hi, everyone. Welcome to tonight's FRC call. We're in for a real treat tonight. We have Zach from Team 5985 Project Bucephalus. And as usual, we have Gordon monitoring the stream and the chat and making all of the magic happen behind the scenes. So give Gordon a wave. Zach, how long have you been in FRC?
I've been doing FRC since 2016, so that's about 4 years.
Yeah, and which season was that?
Stronghold.
Okay, and what's your main job been on the team?
Well, for the first year, I was just learning how to program on the programming team. Then from 2017 and on, I was the team captain and also the lead for the control systems.
Excellent. Well, welcome tonight. We're all really excited to hear what you have to say. So can I say ready, set, go?
Yeah. All right. So today I want to talk about probably one of the more important things of FRC, particularly at the very start. Now, 2021 is going to be quite a different year because we already know most of what the game is. We can talk about what the differences might be. But this is, of course, from kickoff, very, very important. The way that you steer yourself from kickoff is going to dictate whether you spiral into a beautiful engineering solution or if you spiral out of control and into a disgusting pile of garbage. So you might have asked yourself a lot of questions if you've done FRC for a while, like what is the difference between our team and the teams that win championships? And other questions like this. The way that we can answer those is through strategy and analysis. So this is an important thing that we're going to be talking about the whole time. How can we leverage the defining features of the game to best assist our alliance to win matches? And think about each of those words very carefully because they're all critically important. So an overview of bad strategy. This is a robot that 5985 and I very much don't like. What we did was we looked at all of the things that you could do in a game and we said, let's put them in priority order, but we'll do all of them. So what we did is we did our best to make a great gear collector. That's that little gear in the front of the robot. And then make a pretty good climber and make a meh ball shooter. But what ends up happening when you do all of those things, they get in the way of each other and you end up having a robot that can do nothing very terribly. So I want to ask you guys in chat, what is your favorite FRC robot? And later on, we will go and analyze it together and we'll come up with what makes it succeed and what makes it fail and how it interacts with other robots on the field. So on a big list of the tools that you can use to analyze FRC games, one of the first ones that you go to is a field breakdown. And this is one of the important parts of how can we leverage the defining features of the game. So you look at all the obstacles, you look at how big the limitations of the robot to get in each part of the field, you know, what's worth what can you actually hold on to, things like that. We'll get into more detail later. Human robots is a great way of analyzing what's going on in the game. This is just a video of how, when we did it, we just set up the field and roll around on these carts. That's kind of unsafe, actually. Don't do that. But run around pretending to be a robot. And you can get a feel for where you have to be on the field and what kind of robots might come up in the actual competition. Robot archetypes. These are sort of groups that you can put different types of robots into. So like a top tier robot, you know, those kinds of robots that always rank first or second. A minimum competitive. Those are robots that are super simple. Any rookie team can make them, but they are competitive at every range of the competition in FRC. This is because of the way that FRC is built. A rookie can make a fantastic robot that is competitive across the whole range. You don't have to be a top tier robot to be competitive. An effective defense robot, that is, many teams in Australia and of course across the world might be in a situation where they have to be a defense robot. You need to be looking at what makes a defense robot effective. And there are also a bunch of other things specific to the game, long, short, distance shooters, things like that. Scoring analysis. This is simply looking at how many points you can get in a certain amount of time. This is a great graph that 254 made when they were analyzing the 2017 game. And they looked at all these different strategies of all these things that robots can be doing. And they look at how quickly it takes, how long it takes to get a certain amount of points. And then they can also do a risk analysis of, well, what if one thing goes wrong? What does that do to our whole strategy? And not only that, not just one robot, but all three robots, depending on the archetypes that are in an alliance. So you get a really detailed look at what is actually going to happen in a match. Another amazing, for 2021, this is going to be great because we already have a lot of matches that we can watch from 2020. And that's going to be more or less very similar in terms of the field. The physical field is going to be the same, more or less. Just the points might be different. That's the only thing that you're going to be reanalyzing from before. Of course, it's always good to reanalyze your strategy, but rewatching matches is awesome. We've got a great opportunity in 2021 to watch back. So you go on the bluealliance.com, you look at all these matches. Not only do you get videos, you also get the score breakdowns of how everyone scored what. And this is my favorite thing. This is very important. If you're the person who's coming up with everything that's going on in the kickoff, so like you're the coach or if you're the team captain, this strategy sheet is really good because you print out a copy of one of these sheets for every person in the team, including the media team, because if that's the way that your team works, you print out a sheet for everyone in the team. All of these questions, you just write them out. It's super simple and it's actually really detailed and you can spark more discussion. Evaluating the self in terms of what your teams are capable of doing is super important. You need to know what you are capable of doing. That is, what have you done before and you know you can do again? What can you copy and you know it will work? The copying things doesn't always work when you build robots. And what can you invent? And you know that when you make something new, you have to know that it's going to work. Well, that's prototyping. A lot of these questions you're going to have to ask and answer. It's going to be a difficult balance, but balancing the risk is something that you need to learn over time. You're never going to get it right the first time. But the most important thing is knowing what you can do. This quote is very important. Screenshot this. This is the golden rule. Setting goals. This is also super important. Everything that you do in FRC has to be going towards a goal. So this is 148. This is their whiteboard. 5985, we have our own whiteboard. It's pretty similar. We have a goal, like for us, we want to rank 8 in our division. For 148, they want to win the world championship. And they go through every single step that they need to go through to get to that level. So, of course, win Einstein matches, get ranking points, win games, things like that. It's depending on the game rules, it's not always going to be the same path. And depending on what your team is capable of doing, whether you're going to be a 148 top or you're going to be a second pick, you want to be attractive, your strategy will be different depending on what you want to do, what your team is even capable of doing. If you can go to Houston, that's up to you. But once you make that goal and everyone in your team is good with that goal, then that will define everything else that you do. Always remember your goals. Put this whiteboard like in a very public place in your robotics workshop so that everyone can see what the goals are all the time. So setting priorities. Once you know what your goal is, I want to win the Australia regional, something like that. You put a list of priorities based on, do we need to focus on ranking points? Do we need to focus on scores? What things do we need to do in the game? What does our robot need to do and we put it into priority. So this is a very simple list that we did in 2019. And this is a more detailed, a little bit better. This is, we also do this in terms of what does each mechanism have to do, and what are the very specific details and priorities of what our robot specifically does. So sandstorm period, that was autonomous mode. There's a must-have, nice-to-have, and explore. And you, in your must-haves, you have very specifically 2 hatches placed on the rocket in qualification matches or cargo ship in elimination matches. This is very specific. You look at scoring, must-haves, score, cargo, and hatches on all level of the rockets to get RPs in qualifications. This is all very specific, usually has a number to it, and also has an amount of time. So for example, I want to be able to climb the hanging bar in 5 seconds from when I start going there. That's the kind of thing, that's the way that you set your priorities. Scheduling, important. If you're the kind of person who is setting out the schedule for your team, remember these 2 things. Leave flexibility, because things are always going to be different. You can't predict the future. The most that I've been able to predict the future in FRC is like 2 hours a day, maybe. Like, you don't know what's going to happen in the next 3 days. You always have to leave flexibility. The first 2 days, you can generally schedule so that you have breaks and things, and you know what you need to do. Remember, leaving flexibility. Remember the human. These are school children. They're all going to get bored very easily. You need to remember, how is everybody feeling in the room? Because if everyone's, stressed, no one's gonna want to do anything. So let's get a little bit more in depth into strategy. This is the very famous 4334 from Canada. These guys, they knew what they were capable of, and they asked the question, what can we do based on what's on the field to best assist our alliance? So let's look at 4334's very first match. I don't know if you guys have ever done FRC before and you've gone to your very first match, but it never goes right. But watch this.
Qualification match 6 is underway. Hybrid period.
See that? They scored. No, don't look at my YouTube recommended. They scored a basketball on the bottom straight away. They're two. Look at. Oh, goodness me. Look at their 2 alliance partners. They're big robots. They're respected teams. They're tall. Look, that's got a shooter on it. Look at that. You'd expect that to be scoring straight away, but no. 4334, rookie team, straight away, scoring 8 points in autonomous. They knew what they needed to do. They knew what they were capable of doing, and they did it. They knew that they could do it 100% of the time, right when they get into the first match. They're reliable. That makes them get picked. So when they got picked, of course, they got picked by the 2 strongest teams in Canada at the World Championships. Now you might be asking, what makes them more special than any other team? Just the reliability? No, you could do nothing very reliably and you wouldn't get picked to be on a championship alliance. But let's see what's going on here. 4334 is feeding their basketballs in autonomous to 1114. That's a capability of them knowing what they are capable of doing. They know the dynamics of the game. They know how they can interact with other robots to help the alliance. 4334 by themselves can't shoot in that top goal, that very attractive, very high valued top goal, but they can give their ball to another team that can shoot up high. Now, 4334, they're not just smart like in that way. Once the game gets into action, let's watch them.
3-6 points there as well. Score here. 14. Symbiotic shooting over.
So there they are again. They moved to the other side of the court to pick up balls. Now they're coming back to drop off balls for 2056 in this case. Let's fast forward to the end game. Now this end game is super cool. These guys are balancing on these boards.
13 seconds left. Look for the balance. Here comes the Canadian Alliance.
So this team also did it. Their robot's super short. Look over at the Blue Alliance. They did this super quickly. So, you know, Canadians, I don't know, they have like a mental connection with each other. They can just go do things really quickly or something. They're all Canadian. 4334, super short robot. They can fit in the middle of that thing. They just run straight up. And the other two robots, which are big robots, 2056 and 1114 were long. They could fit all three of them. They did it super quickly. And that is another one of the things that they looked at the field and they thought, what can we do to help our alliance have more opportunities to score? And it's not just our opportunities to score, but also descoring the other alliance. Now let's get back to our slideshow. Let's analyze a team. Do we have any teams? Has anyone mentioned any robots or teams that they were interested in?
So we have one person who would like you to talk about the Project Bucephalus robot from 2017.
More? Let's. I don't know if I want to talk about that robot anymore. I'm kind of traumatized from that experience.
I'm thinking maybe you should pick your favorite one.
My favorite robot?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a great question. Okay, I could talk for years about this robot. Let's go blueance.com/team/57176, I think. No. Yes, 5742. No. 5172. A lot of sevens. In 2019. Let's look at their reveal video because it shows off everything that they can do. And a lot of the time you'll hear people talk about how when you're doing strategy, you want to think about the what and not the how. But these two things, the physical robot and the strategy, are very linked together. So there are reasons why you think about the what, not the how at the very start. We'll talk about that later. But you need to understand those reasons. But remember that the what and the how are very linked together. So they just walked in and they just touched it, picked it up. That's going to be one of their priorities. Pick up a hatch really quickly and incredibly often and reliably. They've got vision tracking on the back. That's one of the things that they've been doing for several years before they realized they knew how to do vision tracking. They looked at the vision targets on the field. They know that this is going to help them. Okay, let's watch this again. That's all pneumatics, except for the elevator. That's all pneumatics, right? This is the most brilliant thing the most brilliant robot ever, because the only motor control system that they've got going on is like their drive base and their elevator. Everything else is pneumatic. It's just psh, psh. It's awesome because their robot is so simple and Yeah, it's one of the most effective robots in 2019. Look at this. Pick up off the floor. See, that's fast. Yeah. If we can talk briefly about this mechanism here, this is not a very common mechanism in FRC because this kind of challenge has not really existed before. This team probably would have thought this as like a, I don't know how we're going to get up the platform, so we're going to have to prototype. In your strategic discussions, you always have to ask, what do we need to learn? What are we learning from this experience? What do we need to know in our prototypes? It's not entirely, we do strategy, we start prototyping. It's fluid, and strategy is something you do across the entire season. As you're developing your robot, you always keep revising your strategy based on what you have learned that your team is capable of building. If we talk about the 2017 robot, what happened was we kept building every single subsystem that we wanted to build, but we didn't revise the strategy after we realized we weren't actually capable of building a shooter that shoots into a goal. We just kept working on it all the way up until the competition, and then in the competition we got rid of it. That's why it's important to revise your strategy all the time. Strategy is the whole thing, the whole season, not just kickoff. Now, I had a list of steps that we could go through for analyzing a team, watching matches. So watching good and bad matches is important because you can look at what is this team great at and what does the team have trouble with. What defensive strategies are able to actually subvert this team's strategy. Check their statistics. There is a wonderful website by, I forget what it's called. Yes, this team has a whole lot of scouting data on every single robot in FRC. So let's look at, okay, this is for 2020, all of the regionals that have actually happened. Let's do autonomous cells. No, I don't want to look at the worst robots. No? Yeah, okay. So this will show you, when you've got this drop down clicked on, it'll show you the robots that are the best at putting cells into the goal in autonomous. So at the top, we've got 6560, 1678, 5172. I love that team. all these cool teams that we all love. 6560 is not entirely a famous team, at least in the world stage. So we can look at what they're doing. And we can look at their statistics, like their OPR, which is, we can talk about OPR in another talk because it's sort of outside the scope of this, but it's basically how much they contribute to the alliance. How do they compare outside of autonomous? We can look at, well, what are the kind of requirements that we need to build a robot that can shoot an autonomous so well? And you can see, like, they ranked 6, even though they're amazing at shooting an autonomous. They only ranked 6. They did make it to the finals, which is awesome. But now we can look at other statistics, like, well, maybe auto cells isn't what we want, but we want teleop cells. Maybe that's going to be more worth another alliance. So 973. Let's look at this. So their statistics, they ranked first in LA North, and they won LA North because they picked Citrus Circuits. And if let's watch their final match. Let's see what makes 973 tick. So 973 is autonomous. We're looking over here in the top left. 3 balls straight away. Absolutely gun it back down to the DJ table and come back to the same spot that you started, shoot again, shoot 2 balls, and you've got 73 points in order. Obviously from 1678's help, but you might notice something quite peculiar about 973 when compared to 1678, in that their robot is a big, basically a tower with a shooter that can only shoot at one angle in one direction, an intake on the other side, which is a fabulous intake, and they always shoot from the exact same spot. Look at how 1678 plays. Watch them shoot right here. They're halfway between the DJ table and the auto line. They're able to make a couple of their shots from over there because they've got, like a turret thing going on. So when you're doing your strategic analysis, think about what are the requirements that we actually need. If you're a team like 1678 and you want to be able to work around other teams, you want to be able to shoot in other places, and you have the ability to do that, then that's awesome. And also, like, if you're attempting to learn how to do more advanced techniques like a turreted system, vision tracking, things like that, that's awesome. But if you're a team that's a little bit less experienced, you haven't gone through all this vision tracking, you haven't done a lot of shooters in the past, then 973 seems to be a more attractive option. And there are literally thousands of robots to look at, and you can look at how they interact with other robots and look at the strategy that gets formed by these alliances. It's all about how robots contribute to each other. It's not just about a single robot. It's never about a single robot. Check their statistics. There's also lots more statistical analysis that you can do. This is something that I've been doing. You look at, a correlation between how many cells you put into the goal and what your overall contribution to an alliance is. So whether auto cells is more important or teleop, things like this. You can also look at, what sort of drive-based teams have. Look for more information. So technical binders are great for this. Let's see tech binders. So this is an example of what 254 puts out every year. This is what they give to their judges, and I would recommend to all teams in FRC to do something like this because it's good to remember what you have done in the past And also, you know, it helps judges know what's going on, helps other teams know what's going on. So they've talked about this strategy. They talk about how they go about doing their strategy. They look at the potential robots they could have built. They look at the pros and cons of each of those things. And you can get a lot of insight in not just what these robots do, but why they chose to do these things. And of course, you can look at all of the mechanical details. That's not really important right now, but you can look at their requirements. For example, in their 2019 one, where they talk about, you know, their must-haves. Like, what are the requirements for this particular, okay, for in this case, for each stage. So like teleop, they want to maximize ranking points, improve cycle times. They're speaking in terms of time, and they directly relate the goal with the requirement. So the goal being fast cycle times, the requirement, drivetrain having high acceleration. So in terms of looking at other teams, once you've looked at all this information about this team, you can ask yourself, can our team realistically build something like this? And the answer is usually no, if they are a team that's been doing FRC for 20 plus years. But for many teams, like our favorites over here, 5172, this robot is actually within reach for a lot of teams in Australia because every single mechanism is pneumatic. The architecture is it's a sideways elevator, which is difficult to do, but not impossible. The general gist of this robot is entirely achievable by a lot of teams. So you would be surprised by what you can actually achieve with some optimism. Another team, another robot, oh my goodness, that I really love. It's probably the most overpowered robot ever, is of course this one. You look at this robot, it doesn't really look that complicated. It is pretty complicated in the details, but the whole architecture of it is very simple. It's amazing that no other team came up with a robot that looks like this. I said in the introduction, why don't all robots look the same? And it's generally because in FRC, a lot of people, when they see each other's ideas, they converge to having the same robot. But this is very different from other robots. It's got actually, let's show a video of it doing an autonomous. So if you look through their tech binder, they'll talk about the whole time their need to accelerate quickly in autonomous and their need to be able to score out the front and pick up out the back. This is one of the things this is one of the reasons I really like human robots, because if you are just looking at a piece of paper with a photo of the field on it, you don't really get a feeling for what the robot, where the robot really needs to be reaching for. Human robots, you can get a feel for what it is like to be a robot and what is getting in the way of being more efficient. And in your strategy, being able to pick up from the back and score out the front, that's something that's quite important that you need to think about, because it's related to where things are on the field. So of course, human robots is one method of field analysis. It's probably a bit strange to call it field analysis because it makes it sound like some fancy physics thing. It's just looking at what's on the field. And of course, they just do 4 cubes in order to make it look easy, because that's what 254 does. But your team maybe not, maybe couldn't build this. But in terms of the idea, it's very simple. And for a lot of teams, this is very close in reach. What is the difference between our team and the teams that win championships? The answer is not as much as you think. When you go through all of this strategic analysis and you get to understand what's going on in these teams, and I implore you to keep looking more at other robots, continue to understand why decisions are made and how they're made. You'll realize the difference between our team and a team that wins championships. Not that my team has ever won championships, but we've won a regional or two. The difference between a low level team and a high level team is not enormous. It's not always money, because rookie teams get to Einstein not all the time, but they do. They do it. A lot of it is mindset. And experience. Experience is usually is. So if we want to analyze the infinite recharge game, we can do this. Luann, do we have any questions?
Not yet. So hopefully people will start asking some questions on the chat, but keep on going. You're doing great.
Okay, thanks. If we want to analyze the infinite recharge game, it's going to be a little bit different next year, possibly, but as an exercise, we can do this together. So we can go through each of the analysis tools. So the first one is a field breakdown. The robot starting locations and initial robot configuration. This one, obvious, you can see right here, you start on this line. Up in game object sources. Here you'll be drawing lines on a piece of paper to be saying, this is where balls come from over here and over here, and this is where we're scoring. You draw lines and you'd be able to see what are the critical paths that a robot needs to be taking. Where are the bottlenecks in the field? Where can a defender really stop you? Another great tool and another great reason why I love the Blue Alliance, this website, is, let's look at 148. Because their matches in Plano, they had this thing going on. You could see a trajectory map of where all the robots have been the whole time, where robots spend the most amount of time at. So this is another great way of looking at where people go on the field, and different games will always be different. The meta keeps changing. Of course, you can show like a heat map. This is where all the robots hang out. Someone probably died here or something. Scoring goals, that where that is. There is, of course, the low goal and the high goal. Which one you choose to do is up to you, knowing about what your team is capable of doing. And what's really important is you need to know that you can do it 100% of the time in every single match, because that's what a Alliance captain is going to be looking for. If a robot is like amazing, you can score in the high goal really, really fast, but you only did it in 2 matches. How can they trust that you're going to do it in the very final match when everything's on the line? If I was the captain, I would rather pick a robot that scores slowly and methodically, but they were able to do it every single time. One example was Hastings in 2018. They had a very slow arm, and they had a similar robot design to our robot. It was slow, but it was methodical, and it was very, very reliable, and it scored well. Look up on the Blue Alliance 6508 in 2018. Obstacles. This game, obstacles are fairly open, except for the middle part, which is going to become a bit of a bottleneck. If you play human robots, you'll get to have a feel for how defense plays in with the obstacles. There is, of course, the DJ table, which you have to go underneath. I wouldn't recommend going over top of that. There's in the center, there are those bars, so you can't always go full speed through there, or you might break your wheels if you're using Omni wheels. Field zones and zone restrictions. So this is important for defense. If you want to be a defense robot, which many robots, in fact, it is likely that every robot will have to play at least a little bit of defense, even while they're playing offense. You have to be aware of where the other teams are, and if you've got a team that's really easy to defend, you might just go and defend them for a couple seconds on your cycle. This is important because you need to know the rules of the game, obviously, but a lot of teams don't, which is a bit frustrating. Make sure, especially if you're the driver and the co-driver really needs to have a really in their brain what all the zones are, what they mean. Read the whole manual. We'll get to reading the whole manual later. Field zones, auto and vision targets. This is another cool thing. This year, it's fairly obvious, just the goals have vision targets on them. Other years, you'll have less or more helpful things. Whether you decide, you could put vision tracking on your robot, but if it's in a game where there's no vision tracking at all, you're going to actually waste a lot of time on vision tracking, which you could have spent on some other programming things, which programmers always have great ideas. So they have lots of things to keep working on. Time limits, match periods, how scoring changes versus time. So some games you can get more points depending on what time in the game you do it. In 2018, it was if your thing is balanced for a longer amount of time, you get more points, sort of. Field interaction rules. So all the things that you're allowed to grab onto, you need to be aware of, because it can affect what sort of robot design you have. And also it affects, if your robot's going to be in a different position to all the other robots, how's that going to affect the space that other robots have to get onto the end game? So for example, on the 2012 game where there were robots, in this 2012 game when there were robots balancing on this beam, there was one team, the Robonauts, that decided, let's not sit on top of the platform, but let's hold on to the side of the platform so that everyone else can sit on top. That was a genius idea that was ruled illegal. But that's something that you can think about. If you end up doing that, that's awesome. Thinking outside the box, because I don't think anyone else did that. And we can look at the other analysis tools. Let me get me. Okay, we can talk about the different types of robots that were on the 2020 field. Yeah. What have we got here? Okay. So in this field, it's pretty cool because you can see a bunch of different types of robots. So you've got this robot here, which tries to do everything. This robot, it climbs up the bar. It'll even pick up another robot. It'll shoot from anywhere across the field. and it'll, go under the DJ table. Whereas 973, they're a little bit more relaxed, but they're also able to do a lot of damage because they can shoot so fast and so often. Here's another team. Obviously, this is a very powerful regional. This team is quite good at shooting.
And this is the final match of the final. Blue Alliance,
Of course, because I say that, they show that they're not very good at shooting.
the charging champions. Blue MBRT.
But, they move.
The Red Alliance comes out on top.
Let's see what they do.
3-18. This is Circus moving over to the Red
Playing
Alliance
defense.
player station. They're getting those power cells,
Just like
and they're gonna
running
go over and launch.
running into 114 a whole bunch of times. You'll notice that they're backing off quite a lot. This is something else, another reason why drivers need to be super aware of all the rules. This is one of the rules when you're playing defense against someone. After you've made contact, you actually have to back off quite a distance before you touch them again. So this is what alliance captains will be looking for in a team that is going to play defense for them. They're going to be watching you in every single match. Probably going to have videos of your robot in every single match and how your driver has been playing defense against other teams. And how they react to weird situations. If something weird happens, do they keep their cool? So in this game, you can kind of see 3 robot archetypes. You've got a tall robot with a shooter that's up high, and you've got, short robots with a shooter down low. Take a look at where all the robots are right now. Who's going under the DJ table and who's just going straight through the middle. And some robots won't even bother moving across the field because they know where all the balls are. This is another thing that people became aware of quite quickly in the 2020 season, is that these balls come out from here and there's a limited amount of balls. So if you're shooting into the red goal and you're feeding balls into the Blue Alliance's ball vault, they've got to push them out straight away. So the more that you score into the red, the more there's going to be stuff coming out from this blue player station. So they're right next to each other. So you can just put balls straight away into the red goal, which kind of can tell you which way do you want to face your intake and your shooter, and where do you want to score if you want to get that feed going. Because you could shoot for the high goal, but if your team is not very good at shooting for the high goal and you want to get that feed going, if you decide, oh, this feed is going to be really important for our strategy because it's going to help our teammates score heaps of points in the high goal because they can get all these balls from the blue feeder station. I don't know. If you decide that this is a super important a strategy, not saying that it is, because I would have to go into more detail in how many points it would get you over time, scoring analysis. If you decide that this is super important, then you might design your entire robot around doing this one thing, scoring into the low goal super, super quickly, running back to either the other side of the field or back to this blue feeder station, and then going straight to the low goal, dumping a whole bunch of balls. This is an example of how your goals and your overall strategy directly impacts your requirements for your robot. What does your robot specifically need to be able to do in what amount of time? And of course, how can you do it most reliably, because you know what your team is capable of building and how you can best help your alliance. Anyway, there's so much you can do with strategy. Let's go back to kickoff specifically, because getting this all together and actually happening is one of the arts that you need a bit of experience figuring out. I can give you what I've learned from my experience and other people's experience. So you can kind of get an idea for what's going on. If we can remind the two things from scheduling, leave flexibility, and remember everyone is a bunch of high school kids, some of them more mature than others. So in between these parts, put in breaks, put in fun things. So 148 in 2019, the first thing they did, the thing that they did just before kickoff was they all played a big dodgeball game. That's fun. And not always going to be fun for everyone, but it's a good bonding experience. They enjoy it. It's not just all about working the whole time. And this depends on your team. You know your team the best, so don't let me make decisions for your team. Let me tell you information so that you can make decisions for your team. So 148, they play dodgeball at the start. They watch the kickoff broadcast. They watch the animation. They go through all the robot rules. They look at all the limitations in the robot rules that will, how heavy can the robot be? How big can the robot be? They do the field breakdown just like we did before. They do it very quickly. They do it very simply because they get through their strategy at the start as quickly as possible so they can get onto starting to build robot concepts. Scoring analysis, very basic. What is worth what? How quickly can you do these actions? They'll do a goal map. So, that was the image that I shared before of I want to win championships. What are all the ranking points and games that we need to win in order to get to that point? Random thoughts. So what they do is they say, let out everything that you've been thinking. What does our robot look like in your head? What do you think the robot is going to end up looking like? And, what are the random thoughts that you've got in your head? They get those out of the way and they say to themselves, realize that this is what's going on inside your head and realize that the correct answer is almost certainly not going to be your first idea. So after they do all that, they go through every single action that the robot can go through. And this is always going to be a massive list of at least 20, 40 things that the robots can do. This is things like move, or pick up a box, or shoot from close, or shoot from mid, or shoot from far. Everything, like pick up yourself, pick up another robot, is very detailed, yes, but you get a really good idea of everything that a robot can do. You get an idea of what is going to be difficult to do and what kind of things will sort of come together and help each other. So if you look back at 4334 from Canada, you'll see all of the things that their robot was able to do. They sort of complemented each other because it was a small robot. So, it was able to go through, it was able to do the low goal. It was able to feed balls through. And, if you've got a big robot, that lends itself to staying on one side of the field, avoiding obstacles, and it lends itself to being able to shoot in the high goal and not the low goal. This is important because you need to, with this list of robot actions, if you choose to do this, you need to, once you do your priorities, you need to list out everything that you do not want to do. It's quite important because a lot of the time you find yourself wanting to do too many things. You always have to be cutting back. In 2019, after they did all their strategic analysis, they came back down to one question, which is how do they score stupidly fast? And this one thing, this one question, how to score stupidly fast, this guided the whole rest of their robot development. So you might remember in 2018, this was a similar goal that 148 had. They built a super lightweight robot, a super fast elevator that could go up in like less than 1 second and then come back down again. Picks up boxes really, really quickly. This one thing will dictate the whole robot design. And then they go into prototyping. The way that you schedule this in terms of hour by hour, it's up to you. It's up to how your team meets. You might not even do it on kickoff. You might do it a little bit later. So you might have to do meetings on Slack if you're not able to access your workshop. Talk about the strategy online with your teammates. Come up with CAD models even. Come up with sketches, share with each other online if you're not able to meet in person and go in groups. Things like this. 2018, they did introductions. What's your name? What's something you like? I don't know. They watched the broadcast, hold remarks. Don't say anything while you're watching the game animation with other people. You need to focus, and you don't want to get ideas from other people that you heard from the animation, because then everyone starts thinking the same way. And that's not something that you want. You want to have as much diversity in your brainstorming process as possible. Individual review and discussion, you would go for a break. For example, if you go for lunch, talk with each of your teammates, discuss, review the manual as a team. So in a lot of teams, this is like a rule test. 1678 always comes out with a rule test every year that you can copy and use for your own team. And we do it on 5985. Everyone, including the media team, at least on our team, everyone knows all the important rules in terms of how much everything is scores for. And, if you run into someone, how far back do you have to go before you can run into them again? Early game analysis, again, they do it very briefly and quite quickly because they want to go into the robot mechanisms, what they want to learn, what they can actually do. And then once they get an idea of what they can do, they sort of put together a strategy for their robot. So they start discussing prototype questions. These prototype questions come directly from your strategy. So if you say, I want to be able to pick up 10 balls in 2 seconds. That's pretty fast. And in your prototype questions, you're going to ask, how do we position the intake on the robot to pick up as many balls as possible? How fast does our roller have to be spinning? What type of roller do we need to make it out of? If we're doing a roller, can we use a claw? These are all prototype questions. They all come from how fast we want to pick up balls. This applies for every single mechanism. And if we bring it back to these guys, each of these dot points in these, 2 hatches placed, etc., in Sandstorm, floor intake, aligning mechanism, every single question that you have for prototyping, that'll direct what you actually prototype. That comes straight from the strategy. Now, 254 in 2016, in their tech manual, this is what they wrote down that they did. They started off watching the game animation, of course, not talking, break into groups and discuss. So you'd have like butcher's paper, and you'd have a whole bunch of groups of maybe 3 or 4 people, maybe up to 6, up to you, what you decide your team's happy with doing. Discuss, ideas, come back, present the conclusions to the whole team. They all review the game manual, read line by line every single rule in the game manual. It's big thing, but it is very important to do. Analyze the gameplay and scoring. So this will be doing all of the analysis techniques that we've been talking about before. So like looking at the field, looking at how many points do you get in a certain amount of time, things like that. Come up with what sort of robots are we going to see on the field, and how they interact with each other. If you have a certain alliance made of these robots, how many points can they get? Things like that. Develop strategy that optimizes ability to win matches. This is obvious. If that's your goal, then your team will find its own way to come up with a strategy that it is able to do. Your goal is not always to win matches specifically, but it can be, a balance between I want to win matches or I want to get ranking points. Sometimes you can't do both at the same time. In some games, you'll have to not get a ranking point and sort of ignore that in favor of doing something that's worth more points, like game points, because ranking points are not always worth actual game points that win you games. It depends on whether you want to be, first pick, alliance captain, or first pick or second pick. Begin creating robot concepts. Obviously, comes straight from the requirements. This is what 5985 did in 2020. So first thing we do is introduce everybody in the team to the workshop. So we go through, this is where everything is, respect the tools, things like that. Say hi to everybody. We do a rules test in the morning. Everyone has to pass some percentage to do it, and we always do it open book so that team members know how to go through the game manual. So learn how to use Control F, how to go through everything in the manual, get to know where everything is in the manual. So it's not just knowing everything, but also knowing how to find something. Human robots, we do pretty much straight away after everyone knows the rules. This is to sort of get a break and have some fun, but we also keep on asking ourselves, what are we learning from doing this activity? What do we want to know? So we will put in a new scenario every single game. So we'll have, what if we had 3 robots on defense on the Blue Alliance and 3 robots on offense on the Red Alliance? We'll try out crazy ideas like this. Someone will come up and, ask, oh, I've got this weird strategy idea. I want to try it out. And this is the time where we can do it. Strategy brainstorming, we'll do the same thing as 254. We'll just go into different parts of the workshop, get some butcher's paper out, start writing up ideas for what our robot needs to do. Not mechanisms, not really how, but just what points do we want to get. We will also go through the sheet, which I can also go through later, and I will see if I can get you to find this sheet online, because it's very good, and you can copy it, you can change it. Discussion, we all come back and we talk about it as a whole team. Sometimes this gets a little boring. It becomes a long discussion. Sometimes there are arguments and people get angry and frustrated. You'll probably want to go have a break. You might want to go back into groups in the middle of your full team discussion. Of course, these are just ideas for your team for you to think about. What do you want to do? Making priorities and minimum requirements for the robot. Same thing as we saw before with 254. What does each mechanism specifically have to do in what amount of time? How many game objects, things like that. And mechanism brainstorming, which we do in a similar way to a strategy. We think about physical mechanisms. So here are some quotes. If you remember anything, hopefully this will remind you about things that I've talked about here. How can we leverage the defining features of the game to best assist our alliance to win matches? This goes back to the analysis of the field, assisting other alliance members, Just remember this and keep asking yourself this question. A robot that can do one thing 100% of the time is better than the one that can do everything 50% of the time. This is also very important. It's important for getting picked as an alliance partner, yes, but it's also very important for ranking high. If you're only able to get a ranking point 50% of the matches, you're not going to be like all the way at the top. But if you know that you can do one thing every single time, if you can get one ranking point in every single game, you will rank very high. In Australia, this is particularly so. In World Championships, you will rank pretty well, right? Our team, we got an extra ranking point in 8 out of 10 matches, and we ranked about 20th in our championship division. If we had got an extra 2 ranking points from the climbs that we had missed, we would have ranked 9th in our division, which is, amazing. Think about that. Imagine if we had decided to focus on our climb mechanism and not our cargo mechanism, so that we would have had a more reliable climber. Climbed every match, came 9th in our division. That'd be pretty good. Anyway, keep asking yourself, what do we need to learn? When you are asking, what we want to prototype, it's no good prototyping something that you already know how to do. So if you're a team that's already done elevators to death, then you don't have to prototype another elevator, right? You can CAD an elevator. You can actually do a lot of prototyping in CAD and programming. You just need to ask, what do we need to learn? And then you can figure out what's the best way of learning that. It can be a physical prototype. Physical prototypes are awesome, but it can also be CAD, and it makes it much faster and much quicker if you're able to do that. If you have, not enough team members, what do we need to learn? Maybe we don't need to look at all of these things because we don't have enough people to do it. If you have a lot of people, you can ask heaps of questions. But you also have the problem of we have too many people and not enough things to do. But there are ways to solve that. What are we learning from this process? This is something that I always have to ask myself while I'm in the middle of a strategic discussion or in the middle of prototyping. What are we learning from this? What are we learning from the amount of time that we're spending on this? Because in FRC, at least normally, time is probably the most important resources that you have or don't have. You want to be thinking about, what are we learning with this time that we are spending? If you're building an elevator, again, you might spend a week building, this beautiful elevator that you're not even going to use on the final robot. You know how elevators work if you've already worked on them, 2-3 times before. What are we learning from this process? And another thing in scheduling, this is not just for kickoff, but the whole build season, is trust the process. Why do you trust the process? Because whenever you do an FRC season, or at least whenever I have, and you try to overmanage, micromanage everything that's going on, you end up coming behind schedule. People get very frustrated. The FRC season doesn't lend itself to strict scheduling. You need flexible scheduling. You need to keep revising your strategy and trust the process, because you're going to get there in the end as long as you keep looking at what's going on. Trust the process. Continue iterating all the time. Fail. And once the process is over, you'll get to the end and you'll think, oh my goodness, how did that happen? But it just works. Trust the process. You need to put a bit of faith into it. And that's going to be very difficult at the start, but that's what you got to do. And I am all good to take questions.
Excellent. So we have a few questions that have come in.
Awesome.
First one is, what sort of allocation of analysis time would you spend on the field versus teams versus capabilities that you want to do for the year?
What would I do? We on 5985 we do pretty much all of the strategic analysis on the first and second day of build season. Now, if you've got a very long build season that we might have next year, this might not be quite as important. And of course, when you're doing strategic analysis, your strategic analysis is going to be going on for the whole build season. So as you learn more things, always keep revising your strategy. But if you're trying to schedule like a normal kickoff, I would put in 1 or 2 days for strategy. Reason being, you don't want to spend a whole week doing strategy because everyone gets bored and then leaves. You don't want to do like an hour of strategy because then you sort of misled in the direction that you go in your prototyping. So 1 to 2 days, that is about 6 hours, is pretty good. You might want to do some in your own time if you're particularly interested in strategy. Like if you're doing those score analyses, you might have to do those by yourself, at home after hours, or you might do it, as a team in your own group. It's flexible.
So I'm very curious. How many hours did you spend on strategy when you were a student on the team?
I don't remember because I just sort of kept going into the night until I fell asleep.
Okay. So another question we have is, are there any strategies you use to get people to contribute? Lots of times there are quieter students and it's really hard to get them to open up.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's probably, I mean, in my opinion, one of the harder challenges of FRC is not the engineering, but getting everyone to participate in a really engaging way. The worksheet that you get everyone to fill out is kind of a good thing because it's quite agnostic to the personality of the person. Like you answer the questions and then you come back, you do your presentation, and you see all the ideas that person has come up with. So it's up to the person taking control of an FRC meeting to make sure that everyone is being heard equally. So, Luann's favorite acronym, WAIT, that is, why am I talking? You've got to apply that to yourself. So if you're a mentor that talks a lot, I would ask from the bottom of my heart, please speak less. If you're a team member that also talks a lot, please speak less. Think about everyone else in the room because they might be, feeling like this, might be a bit tired, or like they're just not interested. Ask them what they think because sometimes they will have an amazing idea that no one else has thought about.
Great. You said that winning your matches isn't always the goal in a season. So what goals could you have other than winning?
So FRC, if we look back at this business, winning championships, there's a couple of ways of doing that. So you can, I don't have a marker, but I'd love to write things down. You can be a number 1 seed, and hold on. There was a slide that I had. Yeah. Okay. So you can be a top tier robot. You can go for, 4 ranking points in every single match. That can be your goal. And you rank number 1 in your division or in your regional, and you get to pick who you want to be in your alliance. Now, this doesn't always mean, well, obviously, like you have to win every single match, but the big idea is that you win matches with the 2 ranking points, and you also get the 2 extra ranking points, so that if you don't win a match because you're up against 254, you still get the 2 ranking points. Another case where winning every single match is not going to be your greatest goal is if your team is not the kind of team that really cares about winning. This is important to realize. Not everyone there is there to win. You're not there to win. No team is there to win. You're there to learn, and you're there to teach high school children to love engineering. That's the secret is that it's not about winning. It's about the reason why the goal of winning every single match is there. That's, everyone talks about, yeah, we've got to win all these matches. That gets everyone excited. That, everyone's like, yes, we've got to win. And it builds up energy for everyone in the team, right? But secretly, the actual goal is like a really boring, statement of we want to get a higher percentage of girls in engineering, and we want to have, more people to like help society. It's super boring. No one cares about that, right? So some teams, they will look at that goal of we want to inspire kids to do engineering. You want to inspire, that's the general goal of FIRST. Sometimes it's not going to be win every single match, but it's going to be let's build as interesting of a robot as possible. Let's just build a robot that we're proud of. And that's entirely valid as a strategy.
That might have been my favorite answer to a question this entire workshop series. So I loved it. Another question that came in is, do you typically have the same people doing strategy as well as building the robot, or do you separate them in so that some people are doing strategy and other people are building the robots?
Well, generally, yes, the people building the robots are the people doing the strategy because everyone in the team does strategy. At least on 5985, the media team and the outreach and the awards team and the mentors too, they will all be engaging in the strategy conversation. Reason being, at the very start, you want to have as broad of pool of ideas that you have as you can. If you're already predisposed to an engineering mindset and you've already been through 4 seasons of FRC, you might have remembered, this team had this particular mechanisms like 13 years ago, and you'll think, yes, that's a perfect solution for this. And maybe it isn't. Maybe the person who has never done this before comes up with this idea that no one in FRC has ever done before. And this is something that we like to have everyone participate in, because having as wide of a pool in the brainstorming process is very important.
Excellent. So we've looked at a lot of top tier teams tonight, which is really, really inspirational, but it can also be a little bit demotivating sometimes if it just looks like it's more than what your team can accomplish. Would you have any specific advice about second tier teams, or even some other second tier teams that teams could look at to maybe feel like they actually could compete at that level?
Yeah, that's sort of my bad for looking at like super high level teams. But my hope is that you get inspired and not sort of demotivated by that. If I may say one thing, money is not always the reason why teams get really good, but really good teams happen to get a lot of money. So it just happens. Yeah, 5985, we have literally just exactly enough money to get through our season with the robot that we have. So we, on the scale of teams, we have a fair bit of money, but we don't have like an incredible amount of money. Like, not very little of our robot is actually CNC machined. So if you, okay, this is going to be fun because I was considering putting this in my presentation. 330 The Beach Bots is it has been a team of 10 people, 10 students for this long, 1999. They're just a team out of California. They're just like a few guys and girls, obviously. Let's go to their 2011 robot where they were the division finalist on Archimedes. Where are they? 330. Look at this. They scored. Oh, that's not so good. They scored 59. Look at this. They scored 100 34 points in this match. And let's take a look at what their robot looks like. This is their robot. I know you can't really see it because the quality is a little bit awful, but we might. Yeah, look at this. It's a stick and another stick and just a motor that spins around, and on the end they've got a claw like that. That's it. Every single part on this robot is hand built with like hand tools. You know, they got a jigsaw or like a whatever. Probably half of it is wood. To be honest, they actually made a lot of their robot out of wood and then just painted it to make it look like metal to make themselves look better. That's another thing. If you want to look better, make your robot look pretty. Like this is all hand done with a lot of commercial off-the-shelf parts, just stuff that you can buy, like the sprocket, you know, the bearings, things like that. It's just a stick and a claw. If you're in a game that's conducive to something like this, this is a great opportunity. This doesn't come around very often. 2018, it was amazing because other teams were able to do something similar. They could just have a stick with like a grabber thing, and they were able to contribute really, really well. If we remember from 43-34, they were a super simple robot. You know, they were a tipper and a rolly thing. They were able to contribute on all levels of the FRC competition. If we look at more, you know, let's take a look at a game that's sort of difficult to be really good at if you're not such like an experienced team. That's probably 2019. The challenges are quite difficult. If you like those, you know, circular game pieces, they're kind of hard to grab onto. They're hard to place on. You know, the balls are not, you know, teams are not so great at a lot of low-level teams are not so great at picking up balls at that level. But if we look at, what was the South African team called, Luann?
They were the Springboks.
Yeah. This was my favorite robot. They made Rookie All-Star and then they went to Houston. How about that for inspiration? Yeah, let's look at these guys in this game. This robot made me so happy when I saw it. Where are you? Where are you? Okay, we're looking for team 7523. Yeah. 7523 is this team right here. So this team actually came from FTC before. You'll see it, a lot of their parts in their robot is taken from FTC because it's just stuff they had. They're using the layout of the field to their advantage because they know that, you know, the place where the human player is dumping balls is always going to be at the same spot. So they put this little roller thing. Look, they just grabbed the ball. Oh, come on. Yeah, they just grabbed the ball. And it just happens that they don't need to move their ball holder at all to put it back into the cargo ship. They can just right back out. And they just do that the whole match. So if you're creative, you can get really, really good results even without a lot of hardware. That would be my message. But you have to be creative on the whole level, right? Without creativity, then you can't succeed at any level. If you have all these machining capabilities, you know, you might have a robot that is super standard at everything. So you need a lot of creativity to make a really effective robot.
Great. I think that's all of our questions for now.
Mhm.
So thank you so much. This was an awesome evening. I learned so much. Thank you. Well done.
Oh, actually, I think I remember the second question. Would you be able to read that one out again?
I don't remember what the second question was.
Because I was just thinking about.
So we talked about the allocation of time on the field versus teams versus capabilities. We talked about winning matches isn't always the goal. What
Mhm.
kind of goals could you have? We talked about, are there any strategies you could use to get people to contribute, especially for the quieter students? We talked about, do you have the same people doing strategy as well as building the robots? And we talked about looking at some teams that maybe weren't top tier just to see what they would do. I think those were all the questions we had.
Okay. Yeah, that's left me now, but that's all good.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I can't wait to see what 5985 puts on the field this year. I'm sure it's going to be amazing. Thank you to Gordon for taking care of the chat and just doing all of the things that need to be done. Gordon's the best. So yeah, definitely to both of you. So anyway, I hope everybody has a good night and we will see you next Monday night.
Thanks, Luann.
Thanks. Bye.